I walk.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. My name is Daniel Barkowitz, and I am thrilled to have you joining us tonight for this FAFSA presentation. Thank you all for being with us this evening. Hope you enjoyed the warm-up music as we got started. We wanted just to have a little bit of something for you to listen to as we began. So let me start by introducing myself, telling you a little bit about who I am and what our plans are for this evening. And first, let me thank you all for being here on behalf of Broward Bridge to Life as part of our FAFSA beta completion or FAFSA completion effort. We're beyond beta at this point. It's actually our FAFSA completion effort. I am thrilled to have all of you with us this evening. Again, my name is Daniel Barkowitz, and I am the Assistant Vice President of Financial Assistance for the University of Miami. I oversee financial aid for the University of Miami, have been in that role for about 3.5 years, but have been working in financial aid for about 35 years with a combination of institutions. In my experience, I was director of financial aid at MIT in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I was dean of financial aid at Columbia University in the city of New York. I worked as assistant vice president for financial aid at Valencia College in Orlando, Florida, and have spent really my career dedicated to making it possible for families to afford the cost of education. So, our role tonight is to help prepare you to fill out the FAFSA being the most important piece of your financial aid journey as you head through. I want to also recognize that while I am the face you will mostly see tonight, there are a number of folks working behind the scenes to help answer your questions and to make sure that everything you need you have accomplished tonight. First of all, you will get a copy of this recording this evening. So a copy of the recording will be emailed to you, hopefully tomorrow. So don't worry if you miss something. If I'm going a little too fast, you'll have a way to go back and replay it at your leisure if you'd like to. Secondly, there are a number of staff from financial aid offices around the area. So that includes our friends at Florida Atlantic, at Broward, at FIU, who are here to help. If you have questions about your particular situation, feel free to ask them in the Q&A, and we will respond to you in the Q&A. So that if you have questions, you can type them in the question and answer box. As we go along, we will answer those questions. Now, I'm probably going to answer most of your questions as we go through. So what I would say is hold your questions until you see if I answer them. If I don't, no worries, we'll get to them. And we will stay here at least until 7:30 tonight. It'll be about an hour and a half. The presentation itself will be about an hour, but the Q&A will go until your questions are answered this evening. We make sure you have a chance to get the answers to your questions as we go. Again, so we'll get you a copy of the recording. We'll get you a copy of any information you might need as we begin to step through. So why don't we dive in and let's get started. So to begin with, let's talk about the first thing you're going to need to have, which is what's called your FSA ID. So, first of all, FAFSA. What is the FAFSA? The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It is the application that is used to apply for federal financial aid at every school in the country. So, and including if you're going to go overseas to a school that's offering U.S. citizens federal aid, you'll have to complete the FAFSA. You'll notice the last three digits or last three letters of FAFSA are FSA. FSA stands for Federal Student Aid, or FSA. When you need to apply for federal student aid, you're going to have what's called an FSA ID, or a Federal Student Aid Identification. That identification is a combination of a username and a password, and that is what gets you into the federal student aid system. Now, every individual who fills out their section of the FAFSA is going to need their own FSA ID. That means the student will need one, and at least one parent will need to have an FSA ID. And I'll talk a little later about why might it be one parent or two parents who need their own FSA IDs. We'll look at that as we go through. But keep in mind that every student will need to have an FSA ID, and every parent will have to have, at least one parent will have to have an FSA ID. That ID is much like your ID that your combination of username and password you might use to log into your bank account or your credit card statement or whatever. It's a combination of an email address or username and a password. And a reminder that each individual is going to have their own email address. You can't share email addresses when you register for your FSA ID. Well, where do you get your FSA ID? The most important web page this evening, and I'm going to try to copy some of these things and paste them in the chat for you as we go as well. So if you follow along on the chat, you'll see these links. And we highly encourage you to try to do this as we go through tonight. So if you're able, as we click on things or start completing, you should go ahead and try to complete these forms yourself as we go. Our goal tonight is to make sure that you can complete the application and get this done yourself as we visit this evening. So studentaid.gov is really where you want to begin your application process. So I apologize, my computer's a little slow this evening, but here is the link. And again, I'll see if I can paste it with the HTTP preface. You can click right on it. So if you've never created an account before, if you're brand new to this, you're going to use the button that says, the link here that says create account. If you have an FSA ID from either last year, or maybe if you're a parent, you've done an application for a previous student, or you might have applied for FAFSA yourself as a parent, then you can just click log in. Or students, if you've done something with this before, you can click log in. Remember, students, you need to have your own password, parents, your own password. But let's say I was going to create an account. If I click on create an account, it's going to take me to this page, and it gives me options. I can do this page in English or in Spanish. If I prefer español, si puedo hacerlo en español también. But really, it's up to you as to what language you'd like to use. So I'm going to switch us back to English. I'll also say if you use Google Translate will work on all these pages too. The only difference is the Espanol version aquí is actually formalized and done by the Department of Education. So let's say I'm going to choose English. I click Get Started. And it's going to ask me for some basic information. Remember, I'm going to do this as though I'm the student. So maybe my first name is Daniel, my middle initial or middle name is T, my last name is Barkowitz. I'm not going to tell you my date of birth. I'm not going to tell you my social security number. But if you were filling this out, you want to make sure to do those things. So a couple of things I just want to say while we're on this page. First of all, really, 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 really important that you have your actual social security number. Don't fake that. Don't make it up. Try not to make an error at all. Social security number is how the IRS is going to match your record, how schools are going to match your record. You need to make sure it is your correct social security number. So please make sure that you confirm that as you enter it. Additionally, your last name, you think that might be a simple answer. But let's say, for example, your last name is, like my daughter-in-law's name is, Romero-Gonzalez. Well, is your last name Romero? Is it Gonzalez? Or is it Romero hyphen Gonzalez? That really matters. And the way you know is whatever is on your social security card is what you want to match. So if your passport, your driver's license, your social security card say one thing, but you use something else in your day-to-day life, you want to make sure it matches what's on that legal form. Same with your first name, same with your middle initial. So maybe you go by Manny Rodriguez, but your actual name is Manny Ramon de Rodriguez, right? So, or Manuel. So Manuel would be the first name, Ramon de I forget the last name I use, but whatever would be the last name. So you just want to make sure again that you're matching word for word what's listed here. Once you type that in and click on I agree and click continue, you will continue on to the rest of the process. Now, I'm not going to be able to show you, sadly, all of that because I would need to type in my real information. But I am going to go through and show you a little bit about what that would look like as you go through this information today. So you'll see as we go, uh, as I showed you the process. The next pages in the FSAID process are pretty simple. Um, and let's show you what that's going to look like. Actually, no, well, we won't. Sorry. The rest of the pages will basically go through and ask for a couple of other pieces of information. You'll set up a password, you'll set up your ID, etc. And you'll come up at the end with a combination of a username and a password. Now, once you have that and you're ready to start the application, how does the application actually begin? Let's go back. So let's go to FAFSA form. And on the FAFSA form page, once we get there, you're going to click, you'll see it'll look like this. So I want to identify a couple of things of what this is, and I'll copy this page. This is the direct link to the FAFSA page. So the FAFSA page, you can do one of three things. You can either start a brand new form, you can edit an existing form if you already have one, or if you're a parent and you've been invited to do a FAFSA, you can accept the invitation that you've been sent from your student. So again, we're going to start as a parent. We're going to begin with start as a student. We're going to start with the student application process, and then parents will show you at the end how that process works as well. Now, a couple of points. Hopefully, most of you on the call are seniors in high school. If you're not a senior in high school, maybe you are already a freshman in college, or maybe you're a junior in high school. Remember, this application is for the 26-27 academic year. So it's for the year that runs from August of 26, generally through June or May of 27. Now, what if you're thinking about starting early in the summer? Or maybe you want to apply for financial aid now for this academic year because it's not too late. You can go ahead and do the 25-26 application form as well. That's for people who are attending college right now or who might be coming this coming summer. But if you're looking at next year, next academic year, you're going to do the 26-27 application form. And I'm going to tell you the application form opens every year on October 1. So October 1 of your senior year in high school is when the application opens. And you want to get the application done as soon as possible after that date. I know it's now January 20th, so you may think, am I too late? No, you're not too late, but you want to get it done as soon as possible. Many institutions have deadlines right now for financial aid for the fall. You want to make sure that you meet whatever application deadline that institution has. And I'll show you as you go through tonight, you can list up to 20 colleges on the form itself. So we're going to go through this process starting as a student because we find generally that is the easier way around this. So the first thing you're going to do is log in. You're going to use that combination of your username and password to log into the page. And you want to make sure it is the student's username and password. If they haven't created one before, you can click create an account. Or if you forgot your username or forgot your password, you can do that too. And that will send you a reminder note. But again, you want to log in to begin the application process. If you're starting as a student, and there's a reason we're suggesting this, because students get to invite their parents. If a parent starts, it's a little harder to match the application. But if the student starts the application, you're going to click, I am starting the FAFSA form as a student. So click that button that says student, and you'll hit the continue button. Now, as we go through the form tonight, I'm going to show you a lot of pages. Many of them repeat between the student side and the parent side. So as we go through tonight, I'm going to start with the student side, but remember, many of these pages, parents, you're going to see when you do your part of the application too. So please pay attention as we go, because you'll see these pieces of information again the second time through when we do the parent side, and I won't spend a lot of time on them there because we'll be covering them now. The first four screens that you'll navigate through are just basically videos to give you some basic information about the FAFSA. There's what is the FAFSA form, who's a contributor and why should they contribute to the form, what should you expect, and again at the end, what to expect. So again, you can skip through those pages pretty quickly. You don't really have to spend any time watching the videos unless you want to. Once you get through those four screens, the next screen repeats the information to identify who has logged in. And if it's the student, you want to make sure that information matches you. So this is the information you will have entered when you created your FSA ID. So you'll see in our case, we're going to be using a student by the name of Raya Tran. Raya Tran is going to be our sample student. She was born May 5th, 2023. Here's her social security number, her email address, her mobile phone number, etc. If any of this information is incorrect, you can go to your profile page and you can access and correct any of the incorrect information. But this is what we have for Raya. The very first question Raya is going to answer about herself is, what is her state of legal residence? What state is she a legal resident of? And in Raya's case, she's a legal resident of the state of New York. It asks her when she became a resident of the state of New York. Now, many students get confused here. It's actually pretty simple. If you were born in Florida and you live in Florida, then the date you became a legal resident of Florida is the day you were born, or the month and year you were born. In Raya's case, if you remember, she was born in 2003, so she must have moved to New York at some point after that point. She's reported January 2008. So you just want to make sure you put in a date in there that represents when you came to live in the state you're currently living in, Florida. For state scholarship and for state tuition purposes, you have to have lived in Florida for at least a year prior to beginning your enrollment in the state university system or the state college system or a private college in the state of Florida. So you want to make sure that if you're looking for in-state rates, that date is at least a year ago. And then for dependent students, we'll talk about that in a second. It really matters whether your parents are also state residents in the state of Florida. So that's the first big question. This next series of pages asks you to confirm that you are providing consent. What does consent mean in this context? What we're asking for is permission to access the IRS to pull down the information that's on file with the IRS. Even if you don't file a tax return, we have to do that. We have to go to the IRS and pull the information to make sure that you have not filed. So every person who fills out the application will need to provide consent. If you don't provide consent, you won't be eligible for any financial aid. So it's very important that you click, yes, I provide consent. This disclosure tells you all the reasons why. And at the very end of the page, and I'll magnify this so you can see, you'll see an approve button. It's really important at the end that you click approve. If you don't click approve, you'll get a message that says, are you really, really sure? And if you still refuse to provide consent, you will not receive federal financial aid. So again, really important that you put that information in there. Once you click approve, the form will actually go and pull your information directly from the IRS. If you have a tax return, it will match and pull that information as long as your social security number and name are all correct. And if you don't have a tax return, it will look to the system and say, yes, we recognize you don't have a tax return, and it will send that information over. So you'll see this little progress bar to let you know that the information is being retrieved from the IRS webpage and that information is being posted and updated for you. Once that process has finished, you'll get a message that says, success. We've confirmed the information has been loaded and you are good to go. Now, what happens if you have a problem? If you have a problem where there couldn't be a match, then you can always enter your information by hand. But again, you're better off doing it electronically if possible. Again, I saw a good question. I know some of the folks are typing answers to it. There's a question in the Q&A. I'm a senior. Which form am I doing? Just a reminder, if you're a senior and you're starting your college career in the fall, you'll be doing the 26-27 form. Some programs start earlier in the summer. If you're doing a program in the summer, talk to your school, but most schools in Florida, summer is part of the previous academic year. So, for example, if you're going to FIU or FAU or UCF and you're starting in the summer, you'll want to do both years, 25-26 and 26-27. If you're coming to the University of Miami and you're starting in the fall, or you're going to Broward and you're starting in the fall, in those situations, all you'll need to do is the 26-27 application. Okay. So once we get to this section, we move forward to the next page. And now we're going to talk about your personal circumstances. So this helps the system identify if you're what's called a dependent or an independent student. And you'll see as soon as we step to the next page, you'll see what we call signposts on the top of the page. You'll see there are 5 sections, and you're going to answer all the questions in each of these 5 sections. And you'll see as we go along how far you are in the application. This application moves pretty quickly, and parents, your section only has 3 sections, so that moves even faster. So the very first question you're asked students, and remember, we're talking about students, is what is your marital status? Now you might ask, okay, I'm 17 or 18. Why am I being asked for my marital status on this application? Remember, lots of people use the FAFSA application. You use this as a 17 or 18-year-old going off to college, but so would a 24-year-old or a 25-year-old going back to school, or maybe a 30-something or a 40-something who's decided to go into graduate school or go back to finish their undergraduate degree. Or me, if I were to go back and start a graduate degree, I'd be filling out the FAFSA as well. So students can be students of all different kinds of ages, which is why, again, it's important to answer this question accurately and why they ask it, because they don't know, based on who you are, what your marital status might be. The very next page asks you about your career plans or college plans for the next academic year. So if this is your first time in college full time, you'll want to answer first year freshman. Even if you have dual enrollment credit, even if you're coming in with AP credit, or maybe you already got your AA from having just done it while you were in high school, if this is the first time you've been in college after high school, you want to answer first year freshman. If you're a repeat customer, second year, other undergraduate, you'll see the other answers here as well. This next question trips people up sometimes. A reminder, when you get your high school diploma, that's all it is your high school diploma. It's not your bachelor's degree. So you want to answer no to that question. Okay. The very next page, I'm going to zoom in because it's a little hard to see. These questions are really important. If you can answer yes to any of these questions, you should click the box next to the question, and you're what's considered an independent student. That means we don't need parents' information. The application's just based on you. So, for example, if you are currently serving on active duty in U.S. Armed Forces, if you're a veteran, if you have children of your own, or other people who depend on you for support, if you're an orphan or ward of the court, or if you were in foster care on or after the date you turned 13 years old, if you're a legally emancipated minor, or if you're in legal guardianship, someone is your legal guardian who is not your parent. If any of those answers are yes, click the box or boxes that apply. But in Raya's case, none of those apply. She's going to click none of these apply and hit continue. Again, it will depend on your circumstance. If you can click any of these, you are considered a independent student, but probably most of you are dependent. The very next question asks, are you homeless? Again, this is of the student. Student, are you homeless and self-supporting, or homeless, right, and unaccompanied? So you have to be without a parent or guardian. So you can either be unaccompanied and homeless, or self-supporting and risk of being homelessness. So, give you a couple of examples. Let's say you're couch surfing and your parents aren't around, they're still alive, but you're not with them, and you don't have a place to live, you're couch surfing. You could answer yes to that, and you'd be considered independent as well. You're going to have to provide documentation or proof of that, which might be a certification from the McKinney-Vento shelter or a coordinator at your high school or a meeting with your high school counselor or a financial aid counselor. But that is an option if you find yourself in that predicament. Raya is not. So the last questions Raya's asked about um, her information is whether or not she has any unusual special circumstances. So let's talk about special circumstances and what they mean here. So I'll give you an example. Let's say your parents are still alive, but you're not in contact with them. You don't live with them. You live with a sister. Maybe there was a case of abuse or neglect, and you've had to leave the home because it just is unsafe for you to be there. Or maybe you have a parent who is um, incarcerated, or both parents are incarcerated, and you aren't able to be in contact with them, and it might pose a risk to you to be in contact with them. There are all kinds of situations that don't quite fit perfectly into the situations I described before. So if you're facing one of those situations, you can answer yes here, and your parents' information will be skipped. But again, remember, you'll still have to provide documentation to your financial aid officer to prove your circumstances. So if you're in one of those situations, answer yes. Raya is not, so she answered no. Next page. So, based on all those answers, Raya is what's called a dependent student. That means her parents have to fill out the FAFSA with her, at least one parent. And we'll talk in a minute about who the parents are, but for the moment, at least one parent has to answer or has to provide information on the FAFSA. So, the next question asks, are your parents refusing to provide information? If they are, answer yes. The reason this is important is in some cases, parents might not be willing to provide application materials or information. If that's true, the student can still get a very, very small, unsubsidized direct student loan, but that's all the financial aid they will qualify for if they require to have their parents' information and can't provide it. Parents, if you are nervous about filling out the application, a reminder, filling out the application doesn't require you to pay for college. All it does is gives the financial aid office an ability to assess how much you could qualify for in federal financial aid and potentially state or other financial aid. So remember, filling out the application doesn't oblige you to pay anything. So hopefully most, if not all, will still fill out the application. There's no risk to you in doing so. Um, we can talk about if you're an undocumented worker, there might be, but in most situations, there's no risk to filling out the application. The application is really open, and it's using records that the government already has anyway. So it's just providing permission to have that information transferred over to your application. Okay, so we finished section one. Let's go to section two. Section two asks about your demographics. The first couple of questions aren't used by financial aid officers at all. We do not even see the answers to these questions, but they're asked by the government. The first is, what is the student's sex as assigned at birth, male or female? Again, this is a question we don't see at the colleges. We never get these answers. It's for research purposes on their end. The next question asks for the student's race or ethnicity. You can choose one of the following answers. You can also say, I prefer not to answer. If you choose one of the above answers, you'll be asked to provide details about some specificity about, for example, under white, English, German, Irish, Italian, Polish, Scottish, or other. Again, these are all optional. You do not have to provide them. The very next question is very important, and this is the student's citizenship status. So to receive federal financial aid, the student must be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. Now, let me say that again. The student has to be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. There is no requirement that the parent be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. It's just the student. So, for example, a student who lives in the U.S., but their parents live abroad, maybe they were born in the U.S. during the time that their parents lived here, but their parents never became legal residents of the U.S., that's fine. They can still qualify for federal financial aid. Um, Again, the point here is this: it's the student's citizenship status that matters. You might also ask, what is an eligible non-citizen? Because that's a term that maybe you haven't heard before. So, eligible for financial aid and a non-citizen. So if you think you might be one of those, here's a link, which I'll paste in the chat, of all of the folks who qualify under eligible non-citizen definition. That includes U.S. permanent residents, I-94 statuses with one of the following statuses, including conditional parolee, conditional permanent resident, Cuban Haitian immigrant, etc. You can see all the different statuses about what that might mean. So if you are an undocumented student, you will not qualify for federal financial aid, but you still might be eligible for other kinds of financial aid. You should check with a college or university to see what might be eligible. And again, if you're an undocumented student, you likely will not be eligible for federal financial aid. If you are a documented student, but your parents are undocumented, they can still fill out the application. That information is possible because, again, remember, you are the one that's important here as a student for the purposes of filling out the application. If you have questions about this, you can type them in the chat. You can also ask questions anonymously, sorry, in the Q&A. You can also ask questions anonymously, which we will answer for you. The very next question asks about your parents' educational status. The reason it asks this question is because there are some programs, not federally, but some school programs that track whether or not you're a first generation student, meaning you're the first people or first person in your family who's gone to or successfully completed college. That question's asked here about your parents. Do the best you can to answer this, students, but that's all really it's used for. And then there's a couple of very specific questions. This one asks about whether your parents were killed, either one of your parents were killed in the line of duty, either while they were on active duty in the armed forces, or if they were a public safety officer performing official duties. If that is true, then there are special financial aid programs available to you as a student if that's the case. The next one asks about your completion status for high school. So at the time you start your college experience, what will your high school completion status be? You'll either have a high school diploma or a GED, or you were homeschooled. Pick one of those three and hit continue. If you chose high school diploma, what's going to happen next is you'll be asked, and I'll magnify this so you can see it, you'll be asked to specify what high school did you graduate or will you graduate from. The reason they ask that is so your high school can track how many people have completed the FAFSA. So they won't get your individual name, but they'll be able to see what percentage of their seniors have done a FAFSA. So choose Florida, choose the city, and the high school name will pop up for you. And once you've got it, click on it and click continue, and that will move you forward. You then confirm the high school by clicking continue, or you can edit it if you made a mistake. That's it for the second section. So now we're to the third section. The third section is your finances. So again, you can see on the top, we've done 1, 2, and 3. We have 4 and 5 to go, plus your signature. Now, parents, I want you particularly to pay attention to this page because you're going to see a page much like this when it comes to your section as well. Right now, we're answering it for the student, but these questions are going to be questions that you're asked as well. And you'll notice that for Raya's case, she's answered 0 to all of these. If you come to a page and there's a question that you think the answer is blank or 0, you want to make sure to write a 0 in. Please don't leave a question blank because blank is not a valid response. So the very first questions ask about things most students don't have. Some parents might, but they're individual retirement accounts or pensions. So IRAs or pensions. If you have one of these and you've in the 2024 tax year, because the taxes we're going to be using for your 26-27 FAFSA are the 2024 tax return, it's asking during that year, did you take money from one retirement account and put it into another retirement account? If so, how much was that rollover from one program to another program? Again, most of you do not have this. I would say the vast majority of students don't have it, probably all, and probably most parents don't. But if you do, you're going to want to put the amount here because we don't want to tax that on you twice. We don't want to assume that's income when really it's not income. But again, most students are going to answer zero to these first two questions. The third question asks, hey, in the year 2024, did you get some kind of scholarship or benefit or grant from college that you paid income tax on to the IRS? Again, almost all of you, that's going to be zero. It's very rare that you're paying taxes on scholarship dollars. The only occurrence might be if you got so much scholarship money that it was more than the cost of your education. So this is not about interest earned from your savings accounts or your education accounts or your 1098 or your 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 form nine, no, what's the word I'm looking for? Your 529 savings plan. That's what I'm looking for. So it's not about those. So yeah, again, in those situations, it's going to be still zero. This is really only if you had a scholarship that you paid taxes on. And the very last one on this page, again, in most cases, it's going to be zero, is the unusual circumstance where you live in the US, or you file taxes in the US, but you also earn income overseas at some foreign job. So let's say my permanent address is in the US, but for the last year, I've been working in Paris on a project in Paris, and I got paid in Paris in euros. Well, when I got paid in Paris, I paid taxes on those earnings in France. And so the US government says you don't have to pay taxes twice. You have to tell us you had that earnings, but you get to subtract it in something called a foreign earned income exclusion. So I'm making numbers up, but let's say I earn $100,000 a year and 70,000 of it was in Paris. So I'll on my IRS form, I'll put 100,000 minus 70, and 30,000 is what I pay US taxes on because that's I got it paid in the US. But here, you're going to report the 70,000 so that when we look at your financial aid, we know that is really money you earned. It's important that we understand that. Again, for the vast majority of you, that's going to be zero, especially students. So again, with Raya's case, all of these are zero. The next three questions ask about Raya's assets. And again, parents, you're going to see questions very, very similar to these. So the first is, how much money do you have in your cash, savings, and checking accounts right now? So right now, Raya has about $500 that she reports in her cash account. Number two asks about other investments, including real estate. Raya does not own any real estate. Notice, by the way, it also says don't include the home the student lives in. So for both parents and students, we're never going to ask about your home on the FAFSA unless you live in a two-family home and you rent part of it, then the part you rent is considered an investment, like real estate. But the part you live in, you don't report on the FAFSA. So Raya doesn't own any real estate, nor should she. So in her case, the answer is zero. The next question asks about businesses and investment farms. If you are a large business owner, and I'll talk about the UDMA account in a second. So give me a second to come back to that question, you all who are monitoring the Q&A. So for business and investments, if you have investment farms, again, probably most of you do not, but if you have a business, it should be a big business if you're reporting the asset here. That includes it has to have over 100 employees. It has to be a business that you own at least 50% of, or more, etc. So if it's included. So again, keep in mind here, this is probably not applying to most of you, and it's the asset of the business. So let's say, for example, you're an owner of a share of a business that has, I don't know, Coca-Cola bottling. You do soft drink bottling. And part of your assets include the machines, the trucks, the bottles, the product. That would be a fairly sizable asset, but probably most of you don't have assets that you'd report as businesses, and especially students. If you're a small business owner, maybe you run a gardening business, or maybe you are employed as a sign language interpreter or whatever. Chances are you're not going to have anything to report there. Now, a couple of things I want to address while we're here. And again, parents, please listen to me here because this is important. If you have custodial accounts, including UTMA accounts or anything like that, those assets generally are the ownership of the parent or the person who set that up. So that asset should be provided as a parent asset, not a student asset. That includes things like 529 plans. For example, let's say the student has a Florida prepaid plan. If the student brought into Florida prepaid, it's going to depend on who the owner of the account is, not who the beneficiary is, but who owns the account, who set up the account. If it's a parent account, then it goes under the parent's information. If grandma or grandpa owns the account, then it doesn't get reported on the FAFSA at all. It's only if the student owns the account that it gets reported as a student asset. Also, while we're here, for 529 plans, when it comes to the parents part, you're only going to report the amounts for this student as your asset. If you own a 529 plan and it's for a sibling of the student, you don't have to report it on this FAFSA at all. You will report it on the sibling's FAFSA, but on this FAFSA, you do not have to include it. What else are you not including? Notice, by the way, it doesn't ask you for the total value of your retirement accounts. So if you have a lot of money in retirement, you're not asked for that. It doesn't ask for your home. So just a couple of pieces to keep in mind. That's it for the financial questions. So we're now going to move to section 4, which is the colleges and career section. This is where you're going to list all the colleges that you're interested in applying to for financial aid. Now, notice I said interested in applying to. I didn't say already applied to admission. I didn't say already have gotten admission, acceptance offers. You can list up to 20 schools here. And my advice to you is to list any college you think you might apply to. Don't have to have your admissions application already done. You don't have to do that first. This is free. Remember, you can list up to 20 colleges on this application. And in fact, if you're applying to more than 20 colleges, you want to get the first 20 done now, send it in, and then wait a couple of days, and you can make a correction and put in the rest of your colleges. But you want to go ahead and list all of them, even if you haven't started your application for admission yet. So go ahead and put that in as well. So you'll notice, for example, it asks you to look by state. So in this case, she typed Florida, and then it comes up with a list. This doesn't match, but a list of the colleges that might match. So much like before, you can type in the state, the city name, or the school name. You can also use this thing called school code. All of our colleges have school codes. So as school codes, that's a 6-digit code. At the University of Miami, it's 001536. So if you have that school code, you can use the school code to go ahead and put in and find the college much easier. You can see, for example, some examples. These are just bogus ones, but some examples of school codes here. Once you find the college you want, you click select. Excuse me. It adds the college to your list, and you can list up to 20 colleges on the application. And that's it. And that's basically most of your application as a student. There are a couple of things we have to do to finish up. And the first one is we have to invite your parents to the form to be contributors. Now, contributor doesn't mean contributing money. What it does mean is it means contributing information. And what I want to talk about is who is a parent on the FAFSA. And so I know you think you know who your parents are. You'd be right to think that. But the FAFSA has a different definition of what is a parent. And most specifically, this is about situations where parents might be divorced or separated. So I want to paste this into the chat for you to take a look at. This is what's called the parent wizard. I'm also going to bring this over so you can see the page, and we're going to do this live together. Okay. So let's talk through the situation. Let's say so the first question it's going to ask you is, who are your birth or adopted parents? So legal parents, they mean birth or adopted parents. So my name is Daniel. My wife's name is Rebecca. So Daniel and Rebecca are the parents. Well, maybe in your situation, someone's passed away, so there's only one legal parent. Or maybe it was a donor, so you only have one legal parent. That's fine too. But in this case, we've got Daniel and Rebecca. Okay. I'm going to click continue. The first question that's asked, and by the way, you won't see these questions on the FAFSA. You will if you click on that link that I showed you before that says what counts as a parent on the FAFSA form. But if you don't, it won't ask you these questions. But I'm going through them because I think it's helpful for you to see them. So the first question that's asked on the FAFSA form is, are Daniel and Rebecca married to each other? If you can answer yes to that, and we are, right, then both of us are parents for the FAFSA form. In that situation, only one of us will be invited to do the FAFSA form for our child. And we are going to report ourselves as married, not separated. If we file our taxes together, if we file jointly, only one of us is required to fill out the FAFSA information, and we'll report information for both parents. But if we don't file our taxes jointly, or if one of us files but the other one doesn't, or neither of us file tax information, then we're each going to need to be contributors on the FAFSA form, and we'll each have to do our own section on the application itself. So again, this is really important to understand. The first question is, are you married? We are. As legal parents, we are. And the next question is, how do we file our taxes? So because we are married and filed jointly, only one of us needs to be a parent for the FAFSA application purposes. We can provide information on all of the information because it's only one tax record. Well, what if we aren't married? The next question asks, do we live together? Well, so Rebecca and I never got married. We live together, but that's it. We aren't legally married to each other. If that's the case, again, only one parent needs to be invited. We still report our status as unmarried and living together, and we still both complete the application. And if we file our taxes jointly, only one of us needs to be a contributor. We can report information for both parents. If we don't file our taxes jointly, we're both contributors, like before. Well, what if we're not married, we don't live together? So mom and dad are separated, mom and dad are divorced, mom and dad, maybe you don't even know where dad is. You live with mom, you don't know where your father is, or the other way around. The next question that's asked is if which parent has provided more financial support for the student over the past 12 months? So remember, it's now January of 2026. This is not asking based on a tax year. This is asking for the last calendar year, who provided more financial support to the student? Let's say it's Rebecca. Oops, sorry. Let's say it's Rebecca. So Rebecca provided more support to the student over the last 12 months. If that's the case, then I would choose Rebecca. If it were Daniel, I would choose Daniel. If it's both of us, let's say it's equal or even, and it's an even split, then the parent who provides, so let's go back again. Then it's the parent with the greater income and assets you would select as the parent to report on. By the way, note, it never asks about who do you live with. It never asks about who claims the student. The question here is about who provided more financial support. So let's say it's Rebecca. Is Rebecca remarried? If the answer is yes, then Rebecca and her spouse, her new spouse, are going to be contributors for the FAFSA form. And if they file jointly, only one of them needs to provide information. But if they don't file taxes jointly, both of them will need to provide information. If Rebecca's not remarried, then it's only Rebecca who is the parent on the student FAFSA form. Okay, so hopefully that made sense to you. If you are in a divorced or separated situation and that did not, or you have additional questions, feel free to ask them. We're happy to talk you through them. But again, that is how you determine which parent is going to be on the FAFSA form. Once you get to this parent section, you'll put the email address. This is actually very easy to invite your parent. You're just going to put the email address you want to send the invitation to. Remember, even if you have two parents who are going to need to complete the FAFSA, you're only going to invite one of them at a time. You will send an invitation to the first parent, and they will send an invitation to the second parent if one is needed. So in this case, Raya, remember we're talking about our friend Raya. Raya is going to put the information. She's going to click send the invitation. And once she does that, immediately once she hits this button, an invite email will be sent to her parent. Also, Raya will see this page that shows where the invite was sent, and also a very important 6, 7, digit code. That code is her parent's invite code. And this is the code that will allow her parent to directly link to her application to make the process much, much easier for her father or mother when they do their application. And that link, Raya can also just keep a record of. She'll be able to go back and see that link, see the 6 digit, 7 digit code, so that she can always give it back to her parents. Raya's almost done, but not quite. There's one more thing she needs to do. She needs to make sure she signs the application. If she abandons it at this point, she's not finished. She has to keep on going through. You'll see there'll be a review opportunity to look at all of the information again and also to see that invite code again. And then you'll come to the signature section. At the very bottom, you need to click the checkbox to say I agree and click sign student section. If you do not do that, you have not finished the student section of the application. Once that's done, Raya is done with her section, and her information has been mailed to her parents for them to start and complete their part of the application. And again, she'll see a pending submission status that will show her that 6 digit code. If there's a mistake, maybe she answered the wrong email address, she can always back in and change it by clicking Manage Invitations. She will also, on the bottom of the page, see the next steps in this process. She'll get an email version sent to her, etc. Now, if you're Raya's parents, or if you're a parent, you're going to get an email that looks like this. And in this case, this went to Raya's mom, Alcina. It says, Alcina, Raya began her application for federal financial aid and listed you as a contributor. Would you like to accept the invitation? If she clicks accept the invitation, that will take her right to the application online where she can do, Raya's mom can do her section. Now, very important, if you're using the same computer as your student did, maybe your student did their section and now they're handing the computer over to you. Before you begin, you want to make sure that you log out of the student's application and log back in as yourself, parent, because otherwise you'll just be back on the same record. This happens, I see this a lot when families don't remember and they share the same computer. So in that situation, you want to make sure that you log out and have the mom or dad log back in. So we're going to go fairly quickly to the parents section because much of the information's the same as we already talked about. So again, parents are going to log in using their information. In this case, it's Alcina, Raya's mom. Raya's mom's going to put in the password that she has. If she didn't have one, she needed to create an account. She could do that right here. That invite code is automatically going to be entered for Raya's mom because she clicked on the link. If she didn't have the link, at the very starting page, she could click on accept an invite and type in the number. I showed you that when we started, but to go back there for a second, let's go back over here just a moment. So if I go back to FAFSA form, you can click accept contributor invite, and that will, as you see in a second, as soon as it gets loaded, that will ask me to type in the invite number once I log in. Now, we won't be able to get much further because it asks me to log in. But if I click on complete the FAFSA form, you'll also see right here, as I showed you before, accept an invite. That is where you can accept the invitation to begin the FAFSA. Okay, so once you're logged in, you'll say, are you sure you want to accept this application, this invite? Then, yes, I do. And there's some basic information about why you were invited, what the reason is, what kind of information you're going to be asked. You can skip through all of that. And look, it's those same 4 videos again as we looked at before. There they are again. And the same confirmation of information like we saw before, except this time we're confirming Alcina, who is Raya's mom. Again, Alcina is going to have to provide consent, just like the student did, just like Raya did. The bottom of that page, she's going to click approve and give consent for the IRS to share information, and the IRS information will be loaded to the application. Now, we're going to move immediately to parent demographics. You'll notice, as I said before, the parent section only has 3 sections. The very first one asks for parents' marital status. In this case, Raya's mom is married, not separated. So we know that the mom and dad are married. It's probably just going to be their records together and nothing else. Parents' state of legal residence. Raya's mom, Alcina, moved to um, New York in January of 1990. You can see that here. But again, for you, you're going to put Florida and when you became a resident of the state of Florida if you moved here. Doesn't matter if the dates are different between you and your spouse, as long as they're at least 1 year old or older. I would use the oldest date, but it doesn't really matter. That's it for demographics. Finances are going to move equally quickly because we did most of this before. This is a new question, so I want to highlight this one for you. This question, if you answer these questions as yes, I received them, it makes you eligible for something called a simple or easier application process for financial aid. So if you qualify for any of these, please check the box to indicate that. It will skip asset information in the formula itself. So if you received an income credit, federal housing assistance, free or reduced price school lunch, Medicaid, CHIP, SNAP, SSI, TANF, or WIC, if any of those are received by your family, either in 2024 or 2025, click the box with the associated benefit and click Continue. If you receive none of those, just click None of these apply and click Continue. First question here is about family size. So the IRS is going to send over how many exemptions were on your tax return. So in Raya's case, there were 4 on the tax return. So for example, that might include mom and dad, Raya, and maybe Raya's sibling. But I'm going to imagine Raya's sibling, remember, it's 2024 that is the tax return of record. Raya's sibling might have already graduated college. Maybe Raya's sibling is now living on their own. Let's call Raya's sibling, I don't know, Daniel. So Raya's sibling Daniel is now graduated, living on their own. They don't need to be listed as a member of the family because mom and dad aren't paying support for them anymore. So the question asks, is the parent family size different from the number of individuals claimed on their 2024 tax return? Yes. We don't have 4 anymore in the family. We really only have 3. So Raya is going to answer, actually, this is Alcina, Raya's mom, is going to say there's only one additional person um, who lived with the parent and received more than half of their support. In this case, it's still going to equal 4. But maybe if Daniel's no longer living with the family, that answer would be 0. Maybe you had another kid since the 2024 tax return. Maybe you want to increase the number. So all of that information is possible based on the information there. The next question asks, of the 4 people in your family, how many are going to be in college in the coming year? Only Raya will be in college, so she's answering 1. And then these questions should look familiar. These are exactly the same 4 questions we talked about before: the rollovers, the college grants and scholarships, the foreign and income exclusion. So I won't spend any time going through those again, but they're all there. This asset page should also look familiar. There is one new question I want to highlight for you, and that is about child support received. Now, you might think child support received is income, but for the purposes of FAFSA, it's treated as an asset. That's better for you. We're not counting it as income. In this case, it asks, how much total child support did you receive for the last complete calendar year? The last complete calendar year at this point is 2025. So if you're a parent who receives child support, the amount of child support you actually received is what you're going to put in that box. Not how much you were owed, not how much the court ordered you to be paid, but how much you actually received in child support. That is what you will enter into that top box. Otherwise, if you don't have child support, it's a 0, and all the other information is as we talked about before. That's it. That's the end of the parent application. If you have to invite a parent's spouse, you'll see this section that will come up with parent spouse information. For most of you, if you have filed jointly, it's very simple. I'll show you that in one moment. If you need to invite a second spouse, let's say you didn't file your taxes together, so you need to have a second spouse. Here's where the first spouse, the first parent, will invite the second spouse by listing their email address. And they'll get a separate code. Just like Raya had a code, now there's a second code. But if you, in fact, don't need to invite that other spouse, maybe like Raya's mom, you're married to your spouse, they filed a joint tax return, we're going to ask you one question about that other spouse, and it's that spouse's date of birth. So once you enter the date of birth, that's the only information we need for that other spouse if you file your taxes together. The reason we ask that is there's some allowances in the formulas that are based on the age of the older parent. So we need to be able to compare your date of birth as a parent with your spouse's date of birth. Once you do that, again, parents, you're not quite done. You're going to have a chance to review the information you provided, and you parents have to sign the application as well, as would the second parent if there's a second parent who has to sign. But once you're done, an email will be sent saying, congratulations, the form is done and you will be ready to move on. Now, a couple of things. There is a wonderful opportunity being offered by, and I'll put this link once we get it open into the chat for you as well. This opportunity is being offered by Broward Bridge to Life, South Florida. And it is an opportunity once you do your FAFSA to receive a $20 Amazon gift card to thank you for doing your FAFSA. We are so important. It's so important that you do the FAFSA that we're actually giving you a gift for doing your FAFSA. And I'm putting, whoops, sorry, that's not the right one. Let me remove that. I will put the link to this in the chat for you as well. Once you do the application and submit this form, all you'll need to do is provide a copy of the confirmation email that you are sent from the Department of Education. Just note, this is one per family, not one per student. So making sure if you've got more than one student, please don't submit it twice. It's only one per family. And you'll see information, a copy of the letter that we're looking for, upload that along with the high school you attend, and answer some basic questions. And we will send you a gift card based on our availability of funds. So again, the sooner you get this to us, the sooner we can get you that gift card back with funds available. So that's really the sum of what I have to share with you today. So if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them as we go. I know our crack staff has done an amazing job of answering questions as we've gone along. I do see a question. Let me try to answer this one. If one of the parents doesn't want to be a part of the application, what will happen? So this goes back to if your parents refuse to participate, you really can't. I mean, again, I want to remind you, filling out the application doesn't mean you commit to paying for college. All it means is that you're filling out the application and seeing if the student is eligible for financial aid. There's no obligation to pay for college. But if the parent still refuses, the student won't get any financial aid. It's really important that, again, you document what the eligibility is. Once you've done that, the student can choose, or the parent can choose whether or not to pay for college, but it's not a requirement to pay just by filling out the application. I also want to say some institutions have a second application. I want to mention that as well. So FAFSA is one of the applications. There's another application called the CSS Financial Aid Profile. So I want to just mention that application and provide this link as well. If you're applying to colleges, a lot of colleges out of state use this application, but let's choose Florida. In the state of Florida, for domestic students, not international students, there are two programs that require the CSS profile. The CSS profile is required by the University of Miami. That might sound familiar. And it's also required by the Hubbard College of Administration of Tampa Bay. Now that's Florida. But what about, let's say you're applying to colleges in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, there are a lot of colleges that require the CSS profile, like MIT, Mount Holyoke, Smith, Tufts, Wellesley, Babson, Bentley, etc. So you want to make sure if you look whether or not your college requires the CSS profile. If it does, you want to make sure to get that application done as well. There is a fee for the CSS profile. It is not free, but it is required for institutional financial aid, which is at these colleges, that tends to be the majority of financial aid you might qualify for. So, for example, the University of Miami, you may not qualify for federal grants, but that doesn't mean you won't qualify for University of Miami funds. We provide financial aid funds to families earning significant income, but not significant enough to be able to afford our cost out of pocket. So again, I would advise you if you're looking at financial aid, looking at one of these more expensive colleges to make sure that you apply using their application form as well. I also want to mention some colleges may have their own scholarship application. So that is separate from the FAFSA. For example, Broward College. Broward College has a number of scholarships that are available through their application process. That is separate than the FAFSA. So if you wanted to apply for scholarships at Broward College, you would fill out their scholarship application. Right now, it's only open for 25, 26, but you want to keep an eye out on this page and see what else and when the application might open for their scholarship process. So each institution may have its own application for scholarships. Again, I would advise you very strongly to take a look at each of these individual pages for each of the individual colleges to see what might be available. Broward College will open their scholarship application process in May 2026. Okay. So there's been a question about where do you report the Florida prepaid value? So let me answer the question and we can talk about that. So if you are a Florida prepaid owner, again, you own the asset, it gets reported as your asset as a parent, and it would be reported under cash savings or under other investment. So again, it's going to go on the asset page, and it's only going to be the asset, the value, the current value of the Florida prepaid for the student for whom you're applying for financial aid. Will not include any other siblings. It's only for the funds for that particular student that is applying for financial aid right now. That's the one that you want to list. And it goes again in that parent asset section, either under investments or under cash and savings. Either one of those is fine. Okay, panelists, other questions that folks had or asked? I see, I don't know if this is on purpose. I see, Marcella, you have your hand raised in the uh, participant list. If you have a question, please go ahead and type that in the chat or in the Q&A, and we can answer that question there. Happy to do that. Let me tell you what happens next. So once you get your application submitted, and I know that this question's come up in the Q&A as well, um, it's going to take the college at least a week probably to get the FAFSA from you. At least it could be a little less time, but probably about a week before they get the application loaded on their system. Keep in mind, many colleges then wait until you are accepted for admission before they do anything else with your application. So the reason you want to get your application done now is because colleges go in date order when they run out of funds or have funds that are limited. So you want to get your application done in early. And also remember that everyone who applies using the FAFSA will qualify for at least a small student loan. You may get grants and other sorts of aid additionally. You also want to make sure if you're a first year student that you do the Florida financial aid application. And I'll show you that in a second as well. But that the FAFSA is not the only source, or the federal government rather, is not the only source of financial aid. Schools, the state government, and other sources, private foundations, provide financial aid as well. The FAFSA is your beginning part of that process, so you want to make sure to start there. If the college requests other application materials, they will let you know that. But you want once they have your FAFSA and whatever other materials might be needed, they'll put that together. If they're going to offer you admission, they will send you a financial aid offer, usually with your letter for admission as well. And that will come in the same packet or shortly after that. And at that point, you'll have information about the next steps for your financial aid process. Now, I've pasted the link I'm about to share with you into the chat as well. This is the Florida financial aid application page. Most of you will have done this page or gotten here in your high school. Many high schools, they do this as part of their senior year, sometimes in English, sometimes in social studies, or whatever your U.S. history or associated class is. But you have to create a student account to log in. Once you create your student account, you'll then be able to fill out what's called the Florida financial aid application. It's a one-time application. You only ever have to do it once. You can only do it in your senior year in high school, and that gets you into the Florida system. I know for those of you who may or may not qualify for Bright Futures, that is only one of a number of financial aid programs that Florida offers. You can see here they also have a number of other programs like Rosewood, Florida Farm Worker, Randolph Bracy, what's called the CDDV or Scholarship for Children and Spouses of Deceased or Disabled Veterans, etc. There are other Florida financial aid programs as well. So again, please make sure to do that OSFA application, Florida OSFA, Florida Financial Aid application. That is should be done during the student's senior year in high school, and then that will be good for the entire time that they are in college. Okay. There are some more questions. Let's see if we can answer some of these. Um, do they ever ask about expenses so that parent educational contribution is actually accurate? So, good question. And unfortunately, no. So, expenses are assumed based on a standard allowance for families. There are assumptions that are set aside nationally based on number in the family and number in the household. That is subtracted automatically from your income. And then only a portion of the income above that is included. So, I'm going to make up a number, but let's say you have five in your family at the moment who are living with you. And let's say that number were, I'm going to make a number up, so don't quote me on this, but let's say that number were $52,000. So any income up to $52,000, you wouldn't be able to contribute anything. But that doesn't mean that for every dollar above 52,000, you can contribute $1. There's a mechanism whereby after that point, a portion of the income gets added based on the amount of your income. So again, it is not a direct dollar for dollar contribution. If you want more information about all of that, I'd suggest you could take a look at the federal website or go to the college's financial aid um, page. And on that college's financial aid page, they'll have what's called a net price calculator. And the net price calculator will allow you to do an estimate as to what your financial aid might look like based on the information you provide. So I know it's about 7:12. We're going to do something a little different. So I know some of you have your hands raised. I'm going to go ahead and click on the allow to talk. So Marcella, I have clicked you on. If you want to unmute yourself, you can ask your question live, and I'm happy to see if I can answer it for you. So Marcella, I'm doing that for you. And Kayleen, I also see you have a question, so I'm going to promote you as well. And feel free, if you would like, Kayleen, to unmute yourself, and you can ask your question if you have a question to ask. Either of you. Marcella, I see you dropped your hand, so I'm going to remove that. Kayleen, do you have a question we can answer, or are you all set? Sounds like you may be all set as well. Okay. If you change your mind, you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. Any other questions we can answer for you? I see more questions being asked in the chat. Um, oh, no worries. It looks like it was an accident. No problem at all. Okay. So I think we've answered most of the questions. Let's do this. I don't want to belabor this, and I know
Daniel,
yeah.
I'm sorry. We do have a Shamika Campbell who just raised her hand. If you want to try to grab someone that's raising their hand.
Great. Let's see if I can get Shamika and see if she has a question I can answer for her. Go ahead, Shamika. You can unmute yourself and ask your question. I'm not hearing you, but I see you've come off mute.
I wonder if our webinar settings don't allow attendees to be unmuted.
No, they should because again,
Okay.
they can unmute, they can do it. But let's see, Shamika, can you hear us? Yeah, let me add Katia because I see Katia also has a question. Katia, Peter, you're also there if you want to try. Shamika, you may have to connect your audio to a particular audio source, but Katya, can you try to say something?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, yes. Welcome.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. I
Of
appreciate
course.
the
Of course.
opportunity. I know you mentioned uh, other other opportunities for financial aid, and I missed it. I was wondering, I know you said that this chat will be available via email. Will it be the same exact recording of what you're speaking of now?
Absolutely. It will be. Yes. It will
Okay.
be a recording of tonight's presentation,
Oh,
including a recording
perfect.
of you asking this question. How meta is
Oh,
that?
okay.
And me answering it. Yes, that will
Right.
be there.
Thank,
So yeah,
thank
no
you so
problem.
much.
And
Thank you.
a reminder that the main applications, no problem. The main applications for financial aid are the FAFSA, that's the biggest one. And then CSS Financial Aid Profile is the other one that I mentioned. That's College Board Profile. If you look up financial aid profile, that's the
Okay.
second, and that's mostly for private colleges and mostly outside of the state of Massachusetts. So if your student's applying only to state colleges, not going to be an issue. But then the third
Okay.
is make sure that you look at each college to see if they have their own scholarship application as well, because they may.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, let's see if we have. I think that does cover everything. So here's what we're going to do. Um, I'm going to thank you, Egan, for answering that question. Again, I want to acknowledge and thank our participants this evening behind the scenes who've done a fantastic job of answering your questions as we go. I'm going to take the opportunity to play a little music to play us out. So we'll hang out for a couple more minutes and through at least one more song so that if people have questions that they want to type in the chat, we'll try to get to them as we go and before we go. I was playing, for those of you who have interest, if you're a music person, I was playing a song by Cirque du Soleil called Patsikova. I'm going to lead us out with a song called Alegria, which is also a Cirque du Soleil song. It's one of my favorites. I'm happy before we do though. Let's see, we did get one more opportunity. So want to go ahead. If you want to unmute, you can ask your question before we take off.
Hi, good evening. I have concerns how long I have time for applying for my kid.
So I'm sorry, say it again. How do you apply?
No, how long, for example, for we have meeting today. So what is how many days or how long I have chance to apply it?
Yeah, so
Because
again, so you want to get it done as soon as possible if you haven't already filed the form. And once you file the form, it's going to take the college a little time to turn that around based on their admissions application. But
okay,
you have some time. There's no Most colleges don't have a formal deadline, but I would say to you, you want to get it done sooner rather than later. So
okay,
I wouldn't wait too much longer. And again, it's based on your 2014 tax information, so that should already be in the system. It's not like you have
yeah.
to do taxes. It's not last year, it's the year before. So that information should already be present for you.
Okay, so I'm gonna get a invitation or
Once your
how I'm gonna
student
get the
does
code.
once your student does their section, so they have to do their section first, then they will invite you. That's right.
Okay, thank you so much. That was
You're
my
welcome.
question.
No problem at all. Okay, great. So why don't I play us out? And again, we will stay around. If you have more questions, feel free to ask them. Thank you all for being here this evening.
The earth.
Really appreciate your time and your attention.
Touch.
Have a great evening. And again, we'll get the recording to you shortly. Take care, everyone.